I'm not a lawyer, but I did read the entire lawsuit that Chris Brown has recently filed against Warner Brothers regarding the documentary they made about him. So let me give you a breakdown as to why he says they owe him $500 million. First of all, the lawsuit is against Warner Brothers, but it's also against the production company that made the documentary, producers of the documentary, and a woman named Chantel Deja Frank. Now, Chantel is key to this whole story, so let me give you a little bit of context. Back in 2022, Chantel, listed as a Jane Doe, filed a civil lawsuit against Chris Brown, alleging that while the two of them were at Diddy's Florida house, yes, Diddy, Chris led her to a bedroom, shut the door, prevented her from leaving that room, and then assaulted her. She went on to say that Chris completed what he was doing while he was still inside of her. And the next day, he told her to get a plan B. Now, Chantel gets her lawyers and she files this civil lawsuit. But the problem is those lawyers later withdrew themselves from the lawsuit, and the suit was eventually dismissed after Florida police recovered some text messages between Chris and Chantel that told a different story than the one Chantel told. The messages say, quote, "I don't like talking on phones about stuff like that. I'm just being proactive." And then she says, "Oh, okay, I'll get one." And then Chris says, "I definitely didn't bust inside ya. Was just hella faded, so I wanted to be sure." And then a little kissy face. Chantel says, "Okay, babe, that's fine. I want to get down at midnight." And then on the 31st, which again is the day after the alleged incident, Chantel texts, "Where you at?" And she texts Bay. And then more messages between the two of them are from later in January when she's asking what's up with him. She asks if they can hang out, and she asks about his intentions with her. So like I said, these messages were discovered, and from them, Chantel's attorneys withdraw themselves from the case, and the case is eventually dismissed. Now that you have that context, let's go back to the lawsuit that Chris just filed. So Chris says that this Warner Brothers History of Violence documentary that's about him uses Chantel's story as a centerpiece of the documentary, even though everything she's alleged against Chris has already proven to not be true. Chris says that Warner Brothers and the producers were made aware that Chantel's claims were false, but they chose to prioritize sensationalism over integrity and facts and still move forward with releasing the documentary anyway. Chris also points to another example as to why Chantel isn't a credible person, and it has to do with an ex of hers. Chris's lawsuit says that an ex-boyfriend of Chantel's filed a restraining order against her, alleging that she pulled a knife out on him and threatened his life. Let me just say, I'm so happy I live a boring life. Because, child, what? The point in bringing this example up, Chris says, is to show that while producers of the documentary frame Chantel as a credible and reliable victim, she's actually an aggressor and not credible at all. He goes on to say that producers of the documentary about him knowingly, willingly, and maliciously released this documentary, completely disregarding the truth, and they did it for money and clicks. And so he wants them to pay. So the first cause of action in this lawsuit is for defamation, and it's for 3 particular statements that Chantel made during the documentary. The first was Chris Brown assaulted me. The second is that Chris Brown has a predisposition for punching women in the face. And the third is that Chris Brown manipulated or deleted text messages when he gave them to the Miami Police Department. So he's saying those are lies. Everyone knew they were lies, and they still put it out. The second cause of action is for intentional infliction of emotional distress. And the third is for violating California Civil Code 3344, which has to do with using someone else's name, voice, or likeness without their consent and using it for the purpose of selling something. So in this instance, Chris Brown is saying Warner Brothers not only used his name, voice, and likeness for the documentary, but the success of the documentary is totally reliant on their ability to use him, his celebrity status, and his controversial background in order to get people to watch it. So that's the lawsuit. You tell me what you think.